In this lecture, we are going to implement another type of dependency called as circular dependency. We have already learned theoretically what circular dependency is. In a circular dependency, two modules have a dependency on each other. In this example, if you see, we have two modules. We have user module and we have auth module. Now here, the auth service of auth module has a dependency on the user service of user module. And the user service of user module also has a dependency on the auth service of auth module. And in this way, it is creating a circular dependency. So in this lecture, let's learn how we can implement circular dependency in NestJS. For that, let's go to our NestJS application. And to understand circular dependency, first of all, we are going to create a new module and we are going to create it using NestJS CLI. So here I'm going to generate a new module. For that, I'm going to say nest generate, and we want to generate a module, and we are going to call this module as auth module. So this should generate an auth module for us. As you can see, the command has been executed successfully. If I go to source folder, there we should see a new folder called auth, and in there we should see this auth module.ts. Then I'm also going to create a controller. So for that, again, let's say nest generate. We want to generate a controller, and again I'm going to call this controller as auth. And with this controller, I don't want to generate a spec file. So for that, I'll say no spec. Let's run this command and it should generate an auth controller for us. So you can see it has generated the auth controller. In the same way, I also want to generate a service file. So for that, again, we are going to use the nest CLI command. So we are going to generate a service, and again, we are going to call this service as auth. And I don't want it to generate the spec.ts file. But anyway, the service file has been generated, and with that, as you can see, since we did not specify no spec flag, it has also generated the spec file. But I'm going to delete it because we don't need it for now. All right, with this, we have our auth module, we have auth controller, and we have auth service. And as you can see in the auth module, the controller is registered here in the controllers array, and the auth service is also registered here in the providers array. All right, now let's also go ahead and let's add this auth module in app module file. So there it should have already been added, as you can see. And here we have two import statements for auth module. So let me remove one and let's save the changes here. Let's close this and let's go to the terminal just to check if everything is working fine. So we don't have any errors. All right. Now let's go to auth controller. And there in the auth controller class, first of all, I'm going to inject an instance of auth service. For that, I'm going to use this constructor. And let's inject auth service here. I'm going to call the instance as auth service, and it should be of type auth service. And to use this auth service, we also need to import it from auth service file. Okay, so in this way, we have injected an instance of auth service. Basically, NestJS will inject an instance of this auth service in this auth controller class. Now, in the auth controller class, we are going to create a route for user login. However, I'm not going to implement the exact functionality of login. Here, my main intention is to explain how the circular dependency can be implemented. So here what we are going to do is, let's go ahead and let's create a get route. Okay, basically when we create a login request, we make a post request. But here for simplicity, let's make a get route. And to use this get route, let's also import it from nestjs/common. And we need to use it on a method. I'm going to call this method as login. For this login method, let's say we are going to get the email of the user, which is going to be of type string, and we are going to get the password of the user, which is again going to be of type string. And from here, we are going to call a method from our auth service class. So let's go to auth service, and in there, let me go ahead and let me create a login method. This login method is again going to receive the email of type string and password. Let me call it as pswd of type string. And here what I want to do is I want to check if we have any user with this given email and password. Now we have our users in the user service. Right, there we have email for the user. Let me also go ahead and let me add password for each of the users. Okay, let's go ahead and let's add it for all these users. I'll add the same password for all the users. And here also in the structure, let's add password field, which is going to be of type string. Okay, let's save the changes here. So now what we want is we want to inject an instance of this user service in this auth service so that on this users array, if there is any user with the given email and password, and in the user service, I can see that we have an error. Okay, so this users array, we are pushing something. We are pushing a user object. And here also, let's specify a password field. All right. And since we are already exporting this user service from the user module, as you can see here, we are exporting the user service from the user module. We can go ahead and we can import this user module in the auth module. So let me save the changes in these files and let me close this app module.ts and also user module.ts. Okay, let's go to auth module.ts and there let's specify the imports array and here we want to import user module. And now we can go ahead and we can inject an instance of user service because we are exporting the user service from this user module. So when we have imported it here in the auth module, that user service will be available in the auth module. So now we can go ahead and we can inject an instance of user service in this auth service. For that, again, I'm going to use a constructor and there let's create a private read-only field. I'm going to call it as user service and it is going to be of type user service. And to use this user service, we also need to import it. And in this way, we will have an instance of this user service in this auth service. And now we can go ahead and we can check if the user with this email and password exist. For that, let me go ahead and let me create a variable. Let's say user equals, and here we will say this dot user service dot users dot find. And here we want to find that user whose user dot email equals the email which we are receiving as the parameter of this login method and user dot password equals the password which we are receiving for this login method. Okay, so this find method is going to return us the first matching user. So that will be assigned to this user variable. If no user is found with that email and password, then this user will be undefined. So here we can check if the user exists, then let's say in the result, we are going to send a JSON web token. For now, I'll simply send a string. Let's say my token. Okay. Otherwise, if the user does not exist, we will simply return user does not exist. Okay, let's save the changes and let's go to authcontroller.ts and from there, let's call the login method of auth service. And to that, let's pass the email and the password. And here I'm going to make it as post because with the post request, we are also going to get the request body. So for that, I'm going to use this body decorator. And to use this body decorator, we also need to import it from NestJS/common. And let's simply call it as user. And this user is, let's say, going to have an email of type string and password of type string. Okay, and here let's say user.email. So basically we are passing the email of that user and the password of that user to the login method of auth service. And also to use this post decorator, we need to import it from NestJS/common. All right. And whatever we are going to receive from this login method, let's simply return it from here. Let's save the changes and let's quickly test this auth controller, basically this post method of this auth controller. So let's go to postman. There, the path is localhost 3000 slash auth. And here we want to make a post request. And in the post request, let's select raw JSON. And here I'm going to pass an object. In that object, I'll have an email. Let me go and let me copy that email from user service. So let's copy this email. And okay, this should be in double quotes because here we are passing a JSON data and these string values should also be in double quotes. Okay, let's also specify the password, and password is test1234. Let me go and let me make this request. And you see in the response we have received my token. But if I specify a wrong password or maybe wrong email, in that case we should get the response user does not exist. So this route, this login route, it is working as expected. Now here what we have done is in the auth service we have used an instance of user service. Right, we have injected an instance of user service and we are using it. Now what I also want is here, let me go ahead and let me create a variable, a property, and let's call it is authenticated. It is going to be of type Boolean, and initially let me set it to false. And if the user exists, before returning the token, what I'll do is I'll set this is authenticated to true. Otherwise, it should be false. Now let's go to user service. There we have this get all users method, and we are calling this get all users method from this get users route, as you can see. Now what I want is we should only be returning all the users if the user is authenticated. So in the user service, before returning all the users, I want to check if the user is authenticated or not. And for that, I want to use this is authenticated property of auth service. So now I want to inject an instance of this auth service in the user service. And then I want to check using that auth service if the user is authenticated or not. If he is authenticated, then only we are going to return all the users. Otherwise, we are going to return an error. So for that, we need to inject an instance of auth service in this user service. And to do that, from the auth module, first we will have to export it. So let's go ahead and let's use this exports array. And from here, let's export auth service. Let's save the changes here. Let's go to user module where we want to use that auth service. And there, let's specify the imports array. And here, let's import auth module, because as we have learned, in one module, we always import another module. We don't just import the service which we want to use. Instead, we have to import the complete module. And whatever is exported from that module, that can be used in the module where we are importing it. So let's save the changes. And in this way, the auth service of the auth module will be available in this user module. So now in the user service, we can go ahead and we can inject an instance of auth service. So for that, again, here, let me go ahead and let me use a constructor. Let me specify a constructor. There, let's specify a private property, private read-only property, and let's call it auth service. And this is going to be of type auth service. And to use this auth service, we also need to import it from this file. And now here, let's simply say if auth service dot is authenticated, if it is true, then we want to return the users array in the response. But if it is false, in that case, let's return you are not logged in. Okay. Now, if I save the changes here And if we go to the terminal, there you will see we have an error. And it says here we are trying to use a circular dependency between two modules. And when we are trying to do so, use forward ref to avoid this error. Basically here, because of circular dependency, NestJS is not able to create auth module instance. So to resolve this error, what we need to do is we need to use forward ref. So in the user module where we are trying to import this auth module, there we need to import it using forward ref. For that, first of all, we need to import the forward ref from nestjs/common. And then how we are going to import it? For that, we are going to use this forward ref as a method. To that method, we need to pass a callback function. Here I'm going to use arrow function syntax, and this function should return auth module. So this is how we need to import this auth module in this user module when we have a circular dependency. Let's save the changes. In the same way, in the auth module also, we are importing this user module. So here also, first we need to import forward ref, and using this forward ref, we need to import this user module. So here let's use this forward ref function, and to that we need to pass an arrow function which should return user module. So this is how we should be importing the modules when we have a circular dependency. Let's save the changes. Now let's go to auth service, and there we are injecting an instance of this user service. Here also we need to do some changes. So first of all, from here we need to import, inject, and forward ref. So these two things needs to be imported from nestjs/common. And now we need to decorate this complete thing with at inject decorator. Okay, this at inject is different from at injectable. And to this at inject, again we need to use forward ref, and there we need to pass a callback function. Here I'm using the arrow function syntax, and there we need to specify what type of instance we want to get here. Here we want to get an instance of user service, and rest other things will remain same. Okay, the only thing which we have done is we have decorated this user service, this property with at inject decorator, inside which we are calling the forward ref, and from the forward ref we are returning user service. And again, the same thing we also need to do in user service. So let's go to user service.ts. There we are injecting this auth service. So let's first decorate it with at inject decorator. And to use it, we need to import it from nestjs/common. To that, let's pass forward ref. And again, to use this forward ref, we need to import it from nestjs/common to this forward ref, and we are calling it again. We are going to pass an arrow function, a callback function, from where we are going to return auth service. With this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the terminal. And now you can see we don't have any error and the application has been built successfully. Let's go to Postman. From there, if I make the request with test1234 as the password, you see we are getting the response, my token. Now let's also go ahead and let's make a request to users route, and it should return us all the users. Okay, here we need to make a get request, and you can see it has returned us all the users. So now everything is working as expected. And in this way, we have implemented a circular dependency between the auth module and the user module. Okay, so in the user service, we are using an instance of auth service, and in the auth service, we are using an instance of user service. And in this way, we have created a circular dependency. So I hope with this lecture, now you know what is a circular dependency and how to implement it in NestJS. Whenever you want to implement a circular dependency, you need to remember that you have to use forward ref for that. You have to use forward ref when you are importing a module, like we are doing here. And also, you need to use forward ref when you are injecting a provider. And here you also need to use this inject decorator. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.